L'Istituto di Scienze Noetiche Lyons è stato fondato da Edgar Mitchell, il quale, a seguito della sua partecipazione alla missione Apollo 14, il 5 febbraio 1971, è stato il sesto uomo ad aver messo piede sulla Luna. Insieme ad Alan Shepard, comandante della missione, ha passeggiato lungo la superficie lunare per 9 ore e 17 minuti, stabilendo un record rispetto alle visite compiute dai suoi predecessori. L'esperienza del viaggio sulla Luna ha rappresentato un importante punto di svolta nella vita di Edgar Mitchell.
I would say that my parents and my grandparents were all pioneers. They went across in the United States. My great-grandparents went across the United States over 100 years ago to help settle the West in the United States. It was still
Far west.
far west. And my father was born right after the Wright brothers made the first airplane flights. And I went to the moon. So from covered wagons to going to the moon in under 100 years, that was the history of my family, exploring. And so that was kind of the incentive. My parents were very, very encouraging of me to explore, to become well educated, to succeed at whatever I did. So I had great incentive there from my parents to be the best I could be at whatever I wanted to be, and that was going to the moon. Well, what we are discovering these days, thanks to the new telescopes and the Hubble telescope in space, and seeing how huge the universe is, many times bigger than we ever thought it was. And frankly, seeing that the evidence is now strong that we have been visited by alien civilizations. And so the idea that there is life throughout the universe, and we're not the most advanced species around. And so eventually we know that our sun will burn out, and we're going to have to become an advanced species going off out of this solar system. So my thinking at this point is on the frontier. What do we need? What science do we need? I'm primarily interested in science. What science do we need to become a spacefaring civilization, continue our spacefaring, and to be able to explore our solar system and beyond, and to go outside of our solar system, and to create a civilization that's sustainable long enough to do all of that? That's my interest. Then to go where humans have never been, to look around, take pictures, collect data, and come back and tell the people what it's all about. And that's what explorers do. And that's what I did going to the moon. That's what I'm continuing to do with the idea of going into our solar system and beyond.
Durante il tragitto di ritorno sulla Terra, dall'interno della navicella, Edgar Mitchell ha avuto una profonda rivelazione, assimilabile ad un'improvvisa conoscenza intuitiva. La Terra che osservava davanti a sé gli è apparse come la parte di un intero sistema vivente, l'universo, a formare armonicamente il tutto. Vivere l'esperienza di percepirsi in armonica unione con il tutto ha scosso fortemente la sua visione del mondo, aprendolo improvvisamente ad una nuova possibilità di conoscenza.
And so when we were coming home, that was mostly done. And I could look out the window and be a tourist and look at the heavens. And we were positioned on the spacecraft and rotating perpendicular. We were perpendicular to the plane of the ecliptic that contains the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun, and rotating. And that allowed every 2 minutes a 360-degree panorama of the heavens, including the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun. And I suddenly realized, as I looked at that, from my studies at Harvard and MIT in astronomy, that the matter in our universe, the physicality of our universe, is created in star systems, that they're the furnace that makes matter in our universe. And I realized that the molecules of my body and the molecules in the spacecraft and in my partner's bodies were prototyped, at least, in some ancient generation of stars. So we're stardust, to put it bluntly. And this was a wow experience. This is, oh my. It was an experience, and a deep emotional experience of ecstasy and wow. And when I came back, now this continued for 3 days coming home, and I realized at that point that 400 or so years ago, when the philosopher René Descartes, French philosopher René Descartes, wrote the paper with the permission of the church, that physicality, spirituality, body, mind were different realms of reality that didn't interact. That served a great purpose, that it got the Inquisition off the backs of the European intellectuals, provided they stayed away from mind and consciousness, spirituality, and such subjects. So, for 400 years, science arose without considering these subtle subjects of mind, consciousness, spirituality. But in the beginning of the 20th century, thanks to Max Planck, Einstein, and the early scientists of the late 19th, early 20th century, Einstein came up with the notion that of wave-particle duality for matter at its most subtle level. And quantum mechanics arose out of that. And we now know that Descartes was wrong. Mind and matter do interact. And that the bottom level of it is at the level of quantum mechanics. And so I realized that the thing that was really missing in modern science was, what is consciousness from a scientific point of view? And what is it? What is the cosmology that allows consciousness to be what it is? So I went to some philosophers and thinkers at Rice University near the Space Center in Houston and asked them to help me if they could about this experience. And after a short period, they came back with studies out of the Sanskrit, ancient Sanskrit, that said, we think what you're talking about is an experience called samadhi. I said, what does that mean? That means you see things in their separateness as they are, but you experience them viscerally and internally as a oneness, as unity. In every culture, this type of experience has taken place. In the Greek, it's called metanoia, change of heart, change of mind. In Zen Buddhism, it's called satori, or enlightenment. In the Sanskrit, it's called samadhi. I've been able to repeat the experience on Earth in meditation. And it made me to realize that the thing we should strive for is peace on Earth, and kindness and love toward one another, and cooperation, as opposed to warlike and killing each other. That mind-matter interactions take place across Faraday cage barriers that exclude electromagnetic communication. Quantum resonance is what happens between lovers, between parents and children, brothers and sisters, and so on and so forth. That this subtle quantum information flow, that is a quantum resonance. Intuition is our sixth sense, but we should call it our first sense, because it's so fundamental at the basis of everything, that it was around before our normal sensory perceptions. It was around before when our solar system was formed. So it's more fundamental. It's my opinion that in going to the moon, as in all discovery, is just expanding our scope to see the bigger picture and how we fit into it. And whether we going to the moon, going on to Mars, going outside our solar system, it's still the same thing. discovery of the larger picture beyond ourselves, because it's very clear the more we explore, we're just a tiny little speck in the larger scheme of things. Expanding ourself, expanding our knowledge, expanding our picture of all that is, our cosmology, our beingness, is a part of the larger picture. And in order to understand it, we have to start here and reach out and get larger and larger and see how we fit into it. That's the whole point. But when we go to Mars and look back at this tiny little planet that's Earth, it would sound kind of silly to say I came from the United States or Canada or Israel or England or Italy. No, we came from Earth. I grew up in an area called Roswell, New Mexico, which has a history back in 1947 of a major UFO sighting in that area, and I grew up there. Now, I was going off to college at the time, and on one day there was an announcement in the local paper that an alien craft had crashed near Roswell. And the next day that was said, no, that's wrong. It was a weather balloon that had crashed. But after I went to the moon years later and came back and went back to Roswell and that area, my hometown area, to talk and to give speeches and to meet people, some of the old timers who were there at the time pulled me aside and said, we want to tell you about our experience with the alien crash of 1947. And we have been shushed up. We could not talk about it. The military threatened us if we did. And so they proceeded to tell me how they were involved in that particular incident. In my particular case, and in our case, going to the moon, it was not anything we were ever briefed about. Certainly not on our flight. And I've seen most, and I was in mission control for most of the visitations on the moon, and no such experiences were reported, to my knowledge. I cannot personally validate any specific things with certainty, but from what I understand in the lore, there are several species of alien creatures that have come here. And from my understanding, some of them are very benevolent, some of them are very much helping us try to evolve. There appear to be several, at least. I don't know how many.
Okay.
I have been told at least 4. Now, some of them seem to be more evolved than others. Have you heard of the Phoenix Lights evidence?
Yes.
Okay. I happened to be on the phone with a contact in Phoenix at the time the Phoenix Lights incident took place, which was a huge spacecraft flying over the town of Phoenix. The reason I can be so certain, so positive, is that I'm a scientist, and many of the people that I have talked with and believe and have written about this are very good scientists too. That means the same thing, a relationship, political relationships external to ourselves. There's only rumors of that. I have no first-hand information that I can point to and say that part is true. I know that there are people that would like to do that. I know there are people who are prepared to do that. And even there, though, also there is lore about certain people, certain military people included, who have been taken by the ETs back to their home planet for study. But whether any of that is true, I don't know.
You don't give up with the
Just going-
interest
just
of
going to-
exploring.
No, keep going.
Nel 1973 Edgar Mitchell fondò l'Istituto di Scienze Noetiche, un'organizzazione internazionale no profit, che pur avendo sede nel Nord California, costituisce una comunità estesa in tutto il mondo, di cui fanno parte circa 20.000 membri. All'interno dell'Istituto di Scienze Noetiche IONS, viene prodotta e sponsorizzata la ricerca scientifica sulla coscienza e le sue potenzialità. Gli scienziati dell'IONS, mantenendo intatto il rigore delle scienze naturali, esplorano nuove forme di conoscenza, alternative a quelle proposte dai tradizionali modelli scientifici, indagando fenomeni che tendenzialmente vengono trascurati dalla scienza ufficiale.
Well, I want to say hello and greetings and best wishes to the IONS community group in Torino. It's been many years since I've been in your city, but I did enjoy it, and I welcome you to the IONS community groups. We now have them in many places in the world, and so glad to have you folks in Torino be a part of it.